So just to give you an idea of the scale of this thing, it was a $2.2 trillion deal, which is just under 10% of our regular GDP in this country. The package is designed to be pretty robust. It's designed to be a bridge that helps us get through a prolonged recession and downturn. Um, this is hopefully going to allow us to get back to regular commerce as quickly as possible. In addition to the $2 trillion deal, face value of the deal, because some of the funds can be used by the Federal Reserve, it can be leveraged into providing an additional $4 trillion in support for the economy. We're talking about a lot of money here. We'll talk real quickly about the individual provisions. Perhaps the most important, the automatic payments that the federal government is making to individual taxpayers. They are beginning the process of direct depositing these funds to everyone across the country. The amount is $1,200 per individual, $2,400 for joint returns, plus $500 per child. It begins to phase out for incomes above $75,000 for individuals and above $150,000 in joint income. As we've seen over the last 2 weeks, over 10 million initial unemployment claims. As much as we're going to do to help businesses, those numbers will continue, unfortunately, to climb. But this bill includes some fairly robust, strong provisions for unemployment benefits. Most importantly, most restrictions on the eligibility for unemployment has been loosened, I guess. So if you're applying for assistance, there are all these qualifications, how long you were working, how long you've been out of work, how long you have to wait, etc. Those requirements have been amended and again, loosened as it's related to the coronavirus. In addition, the federal government is providing another $600 on top of the regular state benefits through July 31st. States only have to agree to accept this money, and I would be shocked if a single state said no. There have been a lot of questions about whether or not individuals will remain on unemployment, particularly given this enhanced benefit. It's important to note that eligibility ends when an individual can return to work. So if an employer is reopening and calling employees back, and that employee is available to work but chooses not to, their individual eligibility still ends. You access this, as always, through your state unemployment office, not the federal government. All right, so I've broken this down, the major provisions, basically all employers, also the larger employers, and then we're going to spend most of our time on the small businesses, self-employed, independent contractors, and nonprofits. Let me skip ahead. The first thing we're going to talk about is the payroll provisions, tax provisions for all employers who pay payroll taxes. So if you think about it, you write a check to your employee. Afterwards, you write another check to the federal government that covers the payroll taxes for both the employee and the employer. Under this bill, an employer may choose to delay their payment of the payroll taxes, which is 6.2% of Social Security wages. They can delay that between now and January the 1st, 2021. If they choose to delay that, you have to pay 50% of the accumulated amounts that they would have owed by December 31st, 2021, and the other 50% by December 31st, 2022. And sorry to get in the weeds, but another tax change. Oh, so real quick, there's an important caveat to that. This is generally the payroll tax deferment is generally available to all employers except if you've had a loan forgiven under the Paycheck Protection Program that I'm going to talk about shortly. Another tax change that's important, net operating losses. if you have a business who's had an operating loss and you want to be able to use that against prior taxes paid, now operating losses are expanded from 2018, 2019, and 2020, and generally can be carried back 5 years. That also applies to pass-throughs and sole proprietors. If you're a business, this is primarily for corporations that have AMT credits. This helps accelerate the recovery of those. You also have, you also have the opportunity to increase your interest deductibility for 2019 and 2020. And importantly, for restaurants and retail establishments who in the past few years may have made investments into their property, this helps them accelerate the recovery of that. All of these provisions are really centered on one idea. The federal government wants to improve liquidity for employers, at a time when income is not what it should be, or revenue is not what it should be. It's hard to pay the bills. These provisions are trying to give employers greater access to liquidity. Don't think of it so much as reducing taxes. They're just trying to alter the timing to give businesses the cash they need now to pay their people. Another provision that's getting a lot of attention is the employee retention credit. This was a late addition to the bill, and as a result, it's not getting a ton of attention. But the retention credit generally applies to employers, also nonprofits, for example, who are fully or partially shut down as a result of the coronavirus, or have a 50% drop in gross receipts in a quarter. They're eligible for this until those receipts get back up to 80% of their prior year's amounts. So this is designed to help out employers who've shut down or lost revenue but continue to pay their employees. This tax credit is worth 50% of the wages paid by the employer up to $10,000. It's fully refundable tax credit, so think about it as a $5,000 tax credit for employers. There are special rules that I can get into if you want. You can actually see them there. Special rules with regard to a business with over 100 employees, and special rules for those with less than 100. The difference is if you have over 100, the benefit only applies to employees who you are paying but are not providing services.
Yeah, Brince, this is Karen Hopkins. As I said earlier, we know everybody's struggling, but our struggle probably does look different because we are a small rural community. We get to that part of your presentation that applies to small businesses.
Sure. Let's skip ahead to the Paycheck Protection Program. Okay, so this is the provision that's getting the most amount of attention. It was $349 billion in loans for small businesses, which is any business with less than 100 employees. Is this where I should be, Karen?
If you could help us to see ourselves in the disaster loans, what's available to our community? For example, we have a lot of independent contractors. How does the government define that? How do we know who among us fits that profile?
Sure.
Well, churches on this Zoom session who are going to want to know if they're eligible. As I said yesterday, our largest event is the Carver Festival. It was canceled as a direct result of the COVID-19 crisis. Again, how do we get restored or reimbursed or compensated? Those are the kind of nitty-gritty questions that I'm sure the people on this session are really burning to hear answers to.
Okay, well, I can go through the two main loan programs, or I can just answer individual questions, however you want me to do it.
So, do you mind if I chime in, Ms. Hopkins?
Not at all, please.
Okay. And Bryce, you can kind of follow me up on this, on some of the things that I'm gonna say. So, like you said, Ms. Hopkins, we deal in our communities with a lot of landscapers, part-time mechanics, vendors, so small churches, all that definitely applies to us. So what they need to look at is the April 10th date. So April 10th, which is tomorrow, that is the first day in which those contractors, sole proprietors, 1099 workers, everybody you just mentioned can even start and look at applying. So right now what's happening is we have not been given any guidance on what documentation they're going to need. So yesterday I did a webinar that kind of highlighted some real high level documents that are equivalent to what the employers had to give out. So the first thing is 1099s. If you're one of those contractors who receives 1099s or gives out 1099s, you can apply for the PPP loan as of April the 10th. If you're one of those people who do landscaping on the side, still have a full-time job, but that supplemental income helps provide for your household, you can apply. If you're one of those small churches who is paying your pastor just kind of out of the pocket, writing them a check when just being real frank, when the tithes allow you all to, I had a conversation with the SBA locally and they said, yes, they can apply. So all of the people who get 1099s, get issued 1099s or receive 1099s, or just if you're a barber, beautician, dog walker, they can apply. It's just that as of right now, which may change in the next hour, the criteria that needs to be laid out for the documents that you need to support when you go to your bank has not been laid out. So the first thing we need to understand is that the PPP loan is going through your bank. So whomever you bank with or you have your best banking relationship with, that is where you want to start. And then once you start there, your bank is going to let you know, these are the documents you need to submit to us. Once you submit those documents, then the bank lets you know, okay, whether you're approved or not.
Trevor,
Now, yes,
may I interrupt you for just a moment?
absolutely.
Can you let the group know what banks in our community are participating?
Yes, so Liberty Bank is participating. PNC Bank is also participating. I'm not sure if Tuskegee Credit Union is. I know Hope Credit Union is, which is in Montgomery. I know BB&T is, which is in Montgomery and Auburn. I also know, who else? BB&T, Hope Credit Union, Service First, Riverbank Trust. Who else? Those are the ones that BBVA, those are the ones in particular that I've been working with to know for a fact that they are. I did applications for them.
So are the lobbies to those banks open now, or how do you do this in this social distancing climate that we're in?
So no, the lobbies aren't open. So what you have to do is some businesses, they do have personal bankers, or if you've been banking there for a long time and you built a relationship with one of your bankers, that's been the easiest way, is reaching out to them via email or phone call. Or you can go through the drive-through and ask them, are they participating? And if so, can they give you the information you need in order for you to apply for this loan? So it's really everything. And I know, and to Bryce's credit, the screen that he has up now, right now, this is where the most effort is being spent, because this is supposed to be the relief part, the 8-week relief that we're looking for. So what happens is the bank, once they approve you, now I'm going to go through the bank process. Once the bank approves that, okay, yes, you qualify to get this money, and then the SBA gives you what they call an SBA number, the bank has 5 days to fund the loan in order for it to be guaranteed by the SBA, and then for the SBA in order to pay the bank back. This is what's coming from the Alabama Banking Association. They have 5 days to fund that loan. So if you apply, let's say April the 12th, and you get everything in that the bank has asked you to get in 5 days, that loan should be funded. If it's not, then there's definitely an issue there. The other thing is, and I'm gonna go over these documents that I think you all need to start gathering today or get in the process of gathering. So the first thing is, if you pay rent, there must be a lease agreement in place, whether it's 1 year, 30 days, 5 days, 10 days, whatever it is, whatever you have agreed to pay, whether it's space, equipment, or whatever, you must have a written agreement signed by you and the other party. And it must have your company's name or your name on it. If it has multiple people's names on it, multiple people need to be on the application going to the bank. The second thing, utilities. If you submit that you need to be reimbursed, you want to apply utility costs inside of your PPP loan, if they allow that, you must have supporting documents for that. The other thing is, I'm not sure if you all are LLCs or not. If you are an LLC but have no employees and kind of still operate as a sole proprietor, your articles of organization has to match the information on your bank application. So the bank is definitely doing their level of due diligence. So I'm urging you all on the front end, start doing your due diligence now. So I'm gonna kind of recap what I just went over: lease agreement, utility bill, articles of organization, and or a business license. That has been the 4 organizational documents that I've seen banks ask for. Now, every bank is not asking for that, but let's get that information just in case, because that's a starting point. So then the next question is, the applications are loans first. Will the loan only convert to a grant when an applicant is denied, or can the applicant apply for a direct grant? Okay, Ms. Latifah, there are 3 different programs, and I think that's where Bryce was going with his slides, the $10,000. Then you have the PPP program, which is 2.5% of payroll costs. And then you have the EIDL loan itself, which is not a grant. That's a loan at a very low interest rate for an extended term. So those are the 3 items that are out there that's related to this COVID-19.
Trevor,
So
is the $10,000 like a gift almost? And who gets that?
So that has been the mystery, and that's something Bryce may be able to speak to a little bit more. But as far as all the information that I've been given is, yes, it's an advance, as if potentially that's going to be your share, and it's not $10,000 everybody gets it. It's going to be some type of formula or criteria that the government is going to use to determine the amount of money you get and how they're going to distribute that. That has not been given, or that has not been spoken to yet as of today, but that can all change in an hour or two. So we really don't know exactly how that criteria is going to be determined and how they're going to calculate that.
Brince,
So,
do you have any additional information?
Yes. So oftentimes what they're doing is they're giving $1,000 per employee. So if you have 3 employees, you're getting $3,000. And I know that the law says they have to pay out that $10,000 emergency grant within 3 days. That's what the law says. It's taking longer than that. So I encourage you, if you're trying to get that emergency grant, which does not have to be repaid, even if you don't get the loan, I encourage you to be patient. You know, the SBA is being overwhelmed at the moment, so they're trying as hard as they can.
So who's eligible for that grant?
everybody.
Everyone.
Everybody who applies will get some portion of a $10,000 grant.
Potentially.
I don't think it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
But they're trying to be very generous with the program.
Okay. How can we get clarification on who's going to receive that grant?
Well, this is all through the SBA. So you would want to talk to the SBA. I'm sure y'all have a local SBDC representative that you're hopefully close with that can answer those questions. But this is the SBA's loan program, and that is it's their emergency grant.
So Ms. Hopkins, as of right now, because I've been doing calls with the SBDC all week, and right now they haven't been giving guidance on exactly the rollout of that portion of the COVID-19 package. They know they're going to keep encouraging every single person to apply. And if you have not heard anything, because I have clients who applied the first day it dropped, and we really should have known something by now, but we haven't. And I've asked the SBA director about this, and he kind of just said exactly what Bryce just said, is You know, they're asking everyone to be very patient because every day there's been a small change to the way this process is going. So example is I had Service First, BBVA, and Hope Credit say they had to train loan managers in 2 days on how to take in 300 applications in one day. You got most banks who don't take in that many loan applications in one day. They don't have an infrastructure to do that. So with that in mind, which I know is a very hard thing to say, is that we're asking for everyone to be patient in these type of times. But at this point, that's all we really can do. And the most relief and the fastest relief that I see is this PPP program. That's why it's very important that every single person on this call, if you're looking for some of that relief, it's important that you start with your bank, because every bank has a different process, but there's been a criteria laid out that I've seen across the board. And those initial documents that I see it gather, that is a great starting point. And I'm almost willing to bet those documents are going to be things that the bank is definitely going to ask for, because I've had to submit all those documents for all of my clients. So everything that I'm telling you is a process that I have been through. It's a hurdle that I've either seen. It's a hurdle that I've climbed. So I'm speaking merely off experience of knowing exactly what they're looking for in the banking relationships that I have with some of these local banks.
Trevor, we missed a question in the group chat from Pastor Namiki Emmanuel, who asked, small businesses with less than 30 employees, is there a specific name for this loan for churches and contractors?
So we have to define employee and contractor, because in our community, we use it so interchangeably, and they're completely different things. If you are issuing W-2s at the end of the year for anybody you pay, those are what they call employees, and you can apply for the loan today, right now. Contact your bank immediately. If you are giving 1099s at the end of the year, those are contractors. You cannot apply for the loan until tomorrow. So it's very important that terminology is understood here. Employees are individuals whom you pay taxes for, who you file Form 941s for, or 944s if you're a nonprofit. So if you're not filing those forms 4 times a year, those are not employees. If you are doing 1099s, or if you're one of those faith-based organizations who do a lot of things by just giving checks to a pastor, or giving checks to the cook, or giving checks to the secretary, they're supposed to get a 1099 every year. If you have not given them one, this is the time to do so. So when the bank asks for it, you can have the proof of it.
And Trevor, thank you for that answer. I hope it satisfies the questioner. Another question came from Garissa Wilder, and it asked whether there is a formula based on sales from 2019 and what you may have lost starting the beginning of January to present day. I guess she's looking for a formula?
Okay, I have not seen that particular formula. The only formula that I've seen was calculating the loan amount for the PPP, and that's utilizing the payroll, annualizing your payroll over an average of a monthly amount and multiplying that amount by 2.5, and that's how they're determining your PPP loan. So the expectation is that if you got this PPP loan, you will be paying, the expectation is 100% to your employees. But they have gave leniency on that to say you can pay 75% to your employees, and then 25% for these itemized things like rent, utility, mortgage interest, and some debt interest, but that's up to the determination of the bank.
And anyone whose question is not answered during this Zoom session, I highly encourage you to contact the Chamber by email at ourchamberworks@gmail.com. Again, that's ourchamberworks@gmail.com. Ask your question there if it doesn't get answered here, and we will do our best to track down the answer. We have a question from Reverend John Curry asking if you apply for the $10,000 grant, are you disqualified from applying for other relief assistance?
The language reads no. And Bryce, you can kind of give the details behind that.
Yeah, no, you can apply for as many of these loans as you want, but you can't double dip. For example, you can't take out multiple loans to pay the same bills. And if you get that $10,000 emergency grant, you don't get double forgiveness. That would come out of the PPP forgiveness if you get that loan as well.
Question. So, I'm sorry, Trevor, do you want to add to that?
Oh, no, he's fine. He's fine.
Another question, what are the tax consequences for the loans and or grants for tax liabilities in 2020?
So I would need more details when they say tax consequences, but I'm gonna answer this the best way I can. So as of right now, if you're talking about income taxes, if you follow the guidelines that are laid out on how the money is spent, it's completely forgiven. Completely, no strings attached. If you use any portion that you use outside of what the criteria is, it's a 18-month, essentially really 18 months you have to pay it back. So they give you a 6-month grace period, and then they stretch it out over 2 years. So if you take away the 6-month grace period, that leaves you with the 18 months. So it's very important that, and I'm telling all of my clients, and I'm gonna tell you all the same thing. If you all get the PPP loan and there's a layout of a criteria on what the money needs to be used for, open a separate bank account and allow the money to be paid out of there, because you will definitely have to submit supporting proof to the bank at the end of these 8 weeks or at the end of every 4 weeks to prove what you spent this money on. The last thing, and keep in mind, I am an accountant for small and medium-sized businesses. And small businesses run through hard times. The last thing you want is some NSF charges eating at some of that money. You don't want that. So that's why you want to open up a completely separate bank account and utilize it only for those items. That will keep you in the clear 100%. That will make sure that loan converts to a grant and is completely forgiven.
We have a comment that states they have to reapply if they applied when the SBA EIDL originally opened for documentations online. They're asking everyone to reapply again through the online portal on the SBA website. Do either of you have a comment on that?
I have been told that if you applied before, prior to March the 30th, you need to reapply.
How will you know that? Do they notify you that your original application is nullified, or?
I do not know. I have not applied myself.
Okay, we have a question that is, what about rural churches that give cash and checks from the offerings?
Yes, I've had this question asked a lot, and as of right now, you all can apply, but once again, without knowing the criteria laid out for the people who can apply on April 10th, I can't say yes or no to that yet. So once I know that, then that question can better be answered, because we don't know how they're going to calculate the PPP amount for the contractors, because they don't have employees. Are they? And that's been the debate of, okay, what are they going to want and how are they going to calculate it? So right now, we can't answer that question with some direct guidance, unless Bryce may have more information on that.
You can apply. The application is the same. There will be some specific religious organization type of questions, but like you said, they are still coming out with guidelines as we speak.
Another question is, when I hear the term loan, I immediately think of credit score requirements. Will these loans have any credit requirements?
The idle loan will, yes. The PPP, I don't believe does.
No, it doesn't. Everything I've read is the PPP is strictly based on relationship with the bank, calculation, and supporting documents. And that money is, from my understanding, was like a first come, first serve. So if you got all your information into the bank, they got it processed, and the SBA approved it, then that person would get it. So there has not been a definitive, okay, this person, this person, this person. As the idle loan, yes, which is the bigger loan, that's the one that's up to, is it $2 million, right?
Yes.
That one will, from the language I read was, yes, credit will be taken into effect or looked at, but it's not going to be the determining factor.
Another question. So if you're only applying for the SBA EIDL, do you need to contact your bank at all?
No.
It's just purely an online process.
It's purely, that's all administered through the SBA. So you go to COVID-19.sba.gov, and the application should be there. It's a very straightforward application. You should be able to answer those questions with very ease. It's pretty much general information about the company at a very high level. So I encourage everybody on this call, if you have not applied for that, go apply for that.
Just going down the line, question is about small barbers and beauty salon owners. The questions that the person is saying that many of them don't have a real relationship with banks and wants to know if they are still eligible, and also, are they welcome to go to one of the participating banks for a loan?
Yes, they're welcome to. And the biggest thing about the cash people is the proof of documentation. So you can have an all cash business, but if your records are tight, I mean, the bank is still going to have confidence in them. But the other thing is you have to choose a lending institution that is accepting new people or new account holders, and then that's where you have to start. So because you have some banks who are not accepting, they're like, we're processing only our banking customers. Then you have some smaller banks who are saying, we're taking anybody who wants it. So you have to just kind of do a little bit of legwork to do some research to find out, okay, which banks are accepting new people and which ones aren't, because that is changing daily. Because at 9 o'clock today, the bank could say, yes, they are. But then at lunchtime, they could have got so many new people where they're like, well, no, we can't take anymore.
So the event organizer would apply to their bank for relief because of the lost revenue from, for example, our Carver Festival.
Yes.
And then we provide what documentation, like last year's revenue, what?
Yes, you would need that, and probably some additional stuff depending on whatever the lender is asking for, which I don't know. But you would definitely need last year's records. And the vendors would be eligible as well.
So we need to contact the vendors who normally participate in our festival and encourage them to pursue the EIDL or some form of assistance?
Or the Paycheck Protection Program. Yes, ma'am.
We're coming to the end of our session. Do either Brince or Trevor have any final words?
Well, real quick, I just want to say, if there are any questions that we didn't answer today, feel free to reach out. You can ask Karen, who can ask me, or you can reach out to me personally. Hang in there. Hopefully we're on the backside of this thing quickly.
I want to say proof of documentation is going to be the key to all of this. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that if you did not have your records in order, get them in order now. That has been the hang up with every single person who's applied for the PPP loan, is being able to show proof. So like I said, originally all the business license, the articles, the lease agreements, we all speculated that, okay, they could, but no, they're asking for it. So please get that in order. If you 1099s, if you're supposed to issue them out, issue them out. Also, familiarize yourself with the employee-contractor relationship, because that is very important as you move forward in your business. It's very important that you can generate some level of a financial statement, whether it's an income statement or a profit and loss statement. They are the same thing. That is very important as well, because as they continue to roll out this stuff, these are terms that you are going to hear and read about, and I don't want you to be intimidated when you read and hear about them. So familiarize yourself with that. Proof is the key, being able to prove that, yes, you do pay roof rent if you're a barber or beautician. If you're a barbershop owner, having lease agreements with your barbers, that's important. So that way that shows the loss of rental income. So it's very, and if you're a landlord and you have deferred or waived April or March's or May's rent, that's also included. So it's very important that you document any and everything that you're doing as it relates to relief to someone else. If you're a business owner or a contractor or sole proprietor, that is going to be the key, because they're not just handing it out. Yes.
Don't you think a lot of our businesses are handicapped by a lack of documentation? We very often fly under the radar, may not have those licenses and, and other kinds of things that you've just mentioned to provide. I mean, and obviously they're just going to be out of luck, but do you have any words of encouragement or advice to people who haven't necessarily played by the rules?
Yes, I do. The first thing is, if you're one of those people, you must continue to figure out ways to make money. So if that means, example, if you're shade tree mechanic, you fix cars on the side, but it definitely contributes to your household income, you're considered essential. So maybe you have to rethink or reframe how you do business. Maybe you're used to doing business in your backyard, so maybe you need to think of ways where it's like, okay, maybe I can go to people's houses and change their oil. Maybe I can do that in order to make sure that I keep some money in my pocket. Understanding your costs, even though you may have a side hustle, as we call it, you still got to pay for certain things. So just managing the cost on that stuff and kind of managing expectations as far as what you intend to make will definitely help kind of proceed you forward. And the other thing is, if you're a business owner, or like I said, if you're one of those shade tree mechanics, or if you're one of those people who cuts grass, and let's say you are renting or leasing equipment, contact those creditors and explain to them what's going on. Don't just not answer the phone. If you contact them, most of these people have programs that that you can kind of waive for 90 days or 60 days, but they won't do it automatically. You have to communicate with them. So it's very important that communication is the key if you're one of those type of people, and still get with that bank to see if you do qualify for the PPP. And if so, you probably won't be able to use all the costs that you normally would incur, but you can use some of it, and then at least you can get some money. You probably won't get everything that's due to you just because of that lack of documents and proof, but you may still be eligible for something.
And suppose you haven't filed taxes for the last couple of years. Is there a way to retroactively file?
You can, but it may not be processed in time. But some banks are looking for the tax return when it comes to the PPP. Some are not. So that's been a toss-up just depending on the institution.
We have another question that some financial institutions in the past have allowed sworn statements that show the earnings and expenditures of a small business, especially if you do not have receipts. I guess this is advice to somebody. She's saying, ask if the financial institution you are dealing with will allow this.
I've seen that, but I've only seen that when the banker or the underwriter, they don't see you as high risk.
Okay. Somebody wants to know where they can get a 1099. The person says, if I'm a landlord and my tenant has not paid rent because of losing his job, can I apply for a grant?
Definitely. And you can get a 1099 from Office Depot, or you can download one off Google.
I see a chamber officer as well as Mayor Haygood. Malachi, would you unmute both Bobby Davis and Mayor Haygood in case they have any final words? Bobby, do you?
Karen, this is Bobby. Thank you so much for putting this together and inviting everybody. Thank everybody for joining. Hope it was informative. Please apply. I mean, there are only two answers, a yes and a no, but you don't get either unless you apply. So please apply. Thank you.
And Mr. Haygood, Mr. Mayor?
Simply want to echo what Member Davis said, Bobby Davis said. I want to thank everyone for putting this together. The key thing, and particularly thanks to Brince Manning and to Trevor Small. Key thing is a follow-up, as Trevor has said so well. So many times when we're working with our small businesses, we don't get the follow-up. So the key is to follow up. I think we do the follow-up and are patient, as both has said to us, that we can get a lot for our community. This is very valuable resources. There are a lot of questions involved. Process is not moving as swiftly as people had hoped, but it is moving, as has been indicated. So it's a matter of being persistent and just following up. So thank you again. Anything that we can do, we'll forward the information to you. And thank you to Karen and the chamber.
We have covered a lot of ground today. So again, I want to thank everybody for participating.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.